Hello everyone. I noticed we were having some difficulties with adding strings together, and so we'll briefly just go over that. What this is called in Python is string concatenation, and string is just anything in these quotes right here, right? And then concatenation just adding. So in short, this is adding strings together. Now, if you notice I'm using a different IDE, but it should be the same as your replit. This is the run button on this IDE, which should be on the top corner of your screen. And then, not corner, sorry, middle of your screen. And then this right here, which is my input where I write my code, should be on the left of your screen. And this should be the output, which is your console, which should be on the right of your screen if you're using Replit. Now we can start our string concatenation with just a simple print function with hello world. If we run this, we get hello world right there. Now let's say if you want to add these words together, we can also do hello and then the plus symbol and then a quote right here. So now if we run this, we get the same thing, hello world. We can also add multiple strings together. So hello world, and then let's say you want to add a period at the end, so we can do that. And we get hello space world period. We can also add variables together in Python or strings and variables. So let's first do strings and variables. Let's say you have you say number colon space. Now you want to add a variable to this. So we can assign the variable, let's say num equals 50. Now if we see right here, it's print number, and now we're gonna add, oops, sorry, we're gonna add the variable to this. So we get print number, and then it should display the variable, or display this value right here, which is 50. Now if we run this, what do you think will happen? If we run this, it should give an error right here. Now, in Python, this is just a simple error that we can fix. So, file main.py, which is this file right now that we're coding in, it noticed an error on line 2, which is this print function, and can only concatenate string, not integer to string. This is the integer right here. So this variable right here is an integer, and it's saying it cannot add this string with this integer. So the way we convert this integer into a string is we can do num s or snum, so to stand for string number, equals, you can also say whatever variable you want to say. You don't need to necessarily say snum. Remember, variables are just storing information. They don't have anything to do with a function, right? So we can do snum and then string, which is this function, str, and then the curly brackets, or not the curly brackets, the open brackets. And then we can do num. So now we're assigning snum, which is a new variable, as the string of this number. The string of this number would just be if we said quotes and then put 50 in there. So that's the same thing as str number. Now, if we run this again, we shouldn't get an error. Oops, we do get an error. So let's fix that real quick. Oh, forgot to change this to snum. Sorry about that. Now we should get an error. Now, there we go. Number, colon, space 50. We can also add two variables together. So two two numbers together. So we can do num2 equals 50. Now, if we do num plus num2, what do you think will happen? If we run this, notice how we get 100. Now you may be wondering, why do we get 100? Well, this is because Python is thinking of these two variables as an integer, so it just adds the integers together. Now, let's say if you were to just concatenate them, so 50, 50 is what you get as your output, not 100. So the way you do that is either you can do it in the print function, so str, and then you can do str num and str num2. So this is telling the computer to convert num and num2 as strings. Now, if we run this, we should get 50-50 as the output. Right here, 50-50. We can also assign these numbers another variable. So s num equals string. So turn num into a string. And now we can also do this with number 2 and just change the variables. So s num2 equals num2. Oops, 2. There we go. Now we also need to change these variables, and we also don't need the strings because we already stated that snum2 and snum previously are strings. So we can just do snum snum plus snum2, and then we should get 50-50. There we go. So this is just a basic introduction to adding strings, variables and variables together, and integers too. Now, if you want to use the input function and add them together, you can also add them together with a string. So let's say name equals, and then input, and then let's say enter name, colon, space. Now, if we run this, we'll get enter name, and we can just write Zan. There we go. Now it's not going to do anything because we haven't told it to do anything yet. So now we can do print. Oops, having some difficulties typing. Print and then name. So this is just basically our string, and now we're just adding a variable to it, which is what we did last time. So string and then name. Now if we get it, enter your name, and then you should get name, Zan. And I said it 2 times, my name, on the console. That's why it's showing Zan and then Zan again. But it should just say enter name, and then I write my name, and then name colon Zan. So that's what we get here. Now, let's say the person, let's change this to num, and then enter number. Let's say the person enters an integer. Let's say 10, and then we get name, which is right here, and then plus num, which is the input right here. So notice how when we entered an integer, it didn't give us an error like it did last time when we were entering an integer plus a string. The reason why is because Python just automatically converts this right here, this input, into a string. So that's why we didn't have any difficulties with that. And to double check if it's actually a string, we can also do print type and then num. So now see what type num is. So 5. Notice how it says class string. So this is just telling me that it's a string and that there shouldn't be any problems in this code. Now if we change this to 5 and let's just delete that, this is what we had previously and it should give an error, which is the same error we got. String and an integer can't concatenate it together or add it together, so that's what we saw previously. Now this is with your Mad Libs. This is going off of your Mad Libs, so this is what we had problems that we had last time. So this is just a basic Mad Lib. Do so print what is the weather weather, sorry about that, weather. Here we go. Now let's actually change this to an input as well, so we can just copy that and then we can do weather equals, let's change that to an input because we want the person's input on what the weather is. So now it should say what is the weather and then give you an input. And then if we run this, it will ask what is the weather? Sunny. Now it will end because we haven't told it to do anything. But now we can just say print and then weather, and then it will be able to do, it will just be able to repeat it back. So sunny. And with that, you can create your Madlib by just assigning a bunch of variables to any input that you want the person to do. And this could be weather, this could be their favorite food, this could be anything. And you can just add that to your story. You can also, instead of printing what is the weather and then doing an input, you can also do this inside of input. So weather equals input, and then we put a string in here and says, what is the weather? Now instead of a print function for that, we can just do that and put the string in there. So 7. And there we go. That's basically just a basic introduction of adding strings together and adding integers and strings together. There is one more thing, and that's if, since Python automatically converts the input function and when you're assigning a variable into a string, we can also use something called an int function to change it to an integer if you want to add two things together. So what I'm basically saying is num equals and then input. Now, sorry about that. Num equals input, and then we can say first number. This is just a basic calculator in Python that I'll be making, but this can also be something you want to create in your Madlib, incorporate it in, so we can just add that. So num equals input, what is your first number? And then we can do num2 equals, and then second input, which is right here. I'll just copy that. Second number. Okay, now we print this and add num1 plus num2. This will just do whatever your first number is and your second number. Let's say my first number is 1 and my second number is 2. Then it will just display 12 because it will add them together. It thinks it's a string like hello and world, so just concatenate them together. So it should print 12 right here, which notice it does. Now, if you want to convert this into an integer, you can just do num1 equals int, which stands for integer, and then num1, and let's actually change this to num1 or num1 I. Now we can do num2 I equals int num2. Now, if we just change this so it's 1I and 2I, we will get whatever we put in. So, say 10. Second number, 20. We should get 30, which we got right here. So that's basically what we got. And with this, you can, or hopefully this helps you create Madlib.